All right, thank you everybody for coming out this morning. My name is Jean Reynolds and I'm with the Chandler Public Library. And this is our grand finale for our series that we've been doing at the Chandler Public Library in conjunction with the Chandler Museum and the Center for the Arts, called America in Times of Conflict. And this programming series has looked at the stories of veterans throughout different conflicts within the 20th century. And we've had a lot of good speakers that have come and told us different stories about the different communities and different veterans' experiences at a local level. And so this is a great way to wrap it up. Today we have, as you saw, we've got a little musical, unique opening for you guys. But we're going to have some more music and performance coming up, as well as a couple presenters at the end. So I'll tell you the format for this evening, as you guys have already seen your program. We will be doing an intermission after Odyssey Home. You get about 10 minutes. We'll have everybody exit out through this door. The restrooms are out this way. There's a photographic display that you guys might want to see that comes from ASU. And we have a concession stand as well, which you guys can grab some food or drinks during that time. And then we'll come back in and finish up our program. I want to thank ASU and the different departments who have got together to do this presentation for us. It's going to be a fantastic program. And I want to thank, I have Mary Sager over there, and she is almost the major architect for this entire series. She wrote the grant that provided the funding for us to be able to do this whole series for the Chandler Public Library. All right, and with that, I'd like to introduce Odyssey Home, a veteran performance. This is a fusion of the Odyssey, a classical Greek reflection, and contemporary veterans' written pieces all around the theme of coming home from war. I do want to give a special thanks to our veterans that are here and are going to be sharing their stories, which are Christopher Cadeau, Al Lilly, Shale Reinhardt, and Michael Tuller, and hopefully I got everybody mentioned there. And thank you very much, and we'll go ahead and begin.
Greek epic has a number of different scene types, which it uses over and over. One of these is the hospitality scene, which represents an ideal way that one receives an unknown guest into the home according to ancient Greek tradition. The stranger is instantly recognized as a worthy person. He is fed and entertained. Only then does the host ask his name and establish a more permanent relationship in which they can reciprocally host one another and look out for one another forever. The Odyssey is composed of repeated variations on this scene type, in which every time it goes wrong somehow.
Odysseus and his party left the town behind, and before long had reached the rich and well-run farmlands of Laertes, which he had reclaimed from their natural state by his own exertions long ago. Here was his cottage, surrounded by outbuildings where the serfs that labored for him had their meals and sat and slept. When they reached the place, Odysseus said to his son and his servants, "Go into the main building now, and straightway kill the best pig you can find for our midday meal. Meanwhile, I shall test my father, to find out whether he will know me when he sees me, or fail to recognize me after so long an absence."
As a Marine coming home, it seems to go either one of three ways. It's either full of butterflies because you're about to see the faces of people who just might be more excited to see you than you are to see them. It could be dreadful because you did something last time you saw them and amends have yet to be made. Or you could have no feeling at all, which almost always leads to loneliness. I'm not sure which one of the latter two is worse.
When the patient good Odysseus saw how old and worn his father looked and realized the depth of his misery, he halted under a tall pear tree, and the tears came into his eyes. He deliberated in his heart and mind whether to hug and kiss his father and tell him the whole story of his return home to his native land, or first, to question him and thoroughly test him. Upon reflection, he thought it better to start by testing him with words that would rouse him.
Coming home from deployment and coming home from the military are nothing alike, but each have a make or break moment. That moment when I consciously decide that I'm going to have a positive mental attitude. Just kidding. Ate a bunch of painkillers to feel better.
He told her of his stay with Aeolus, who gave him a friendly welcome and saw him on his way, and how the gale, since it was not his destiny to reach his home so soon, had caught him once more and driven him, sick at heart, over the teeming seas. Next he told how he came to Teleopus, where the Lystranians destroyed his fleet and all his fighting men, the black ship that carried him being the only one to get away.
That last part never really materialized in my head as a thought. I just gravitated towards washing down 4 Percocet at a time. With each moment I wasn't happy with myself in some way, shape, or form. And that meltdown always happened after all the work was done and I got home by myself.
Despite our late arrival, the situation dictates maintaining my military bearing. I cannot wallow in pity my family could not be here to celebrate this milestone with me. Gathering my possessions from the gear truck, my Master Sergeant and I hastily reunite with members of our unit at our shop. My work family replaces my biological family's role in homecoming, and the welcome back is sincere. A speech is given and shots are doled out to everyone of legal drinking age that now includes me. I turned 21 today. My desire to be reclusive and sleep after I return to the barracks is interrupted by the voices of my peers, all men. They will not let my 21st birthday go unnoticed, and I'm invited to celebrate further. My new room, including a bed with no sheets, is abandoned in favor of joining my work companions. The night is filled with cheap beer and cranberry vodka shots, and I enjoy the camaraderie immensely for the next few hours until my body, unaccustomed to drinking, rejects everything. Under the careful watch of my peers, I end the night with my hair pulled into a ponytail with a boot band and the toilet as my best friend.
Meanwhile, the lion-hearted Odysseus, in his own home again, was bathed and rubbed with oil by the housekeeper Eurynome, and clothed by her in a beautiful cloak and tunic. Then Athena enhanced his comeliness from head to foot. She made him look taller and sturdier, and she caused the bushy locks to hang from his head, thick as petals of the hyacinth in bloom. Just as a craftsman trained by Hephaestus, and herself in the secrets of his art takes pains to put a graceful finish to his work by overlaying silverware with gold, she endowed his head and shoulders with an added beauty. He came out from the bath looking like one of the everlasting gods.
Excerpt from handwritten, March 4th, 2005. Evening colors finished sounding a few minutes ago. Being back home isn't as wonderful as I thought it would be. In fact, I am quite lonely. There isn't anyone that I particularly hang out with, and I feel out of place.
The one feeling of joy that most of us could agree with was the feeling of, I'm so glad to be home. This is because in other countries, you don't have the choices we have here. You can't simply go, hey, I want Taco Bell or pizza, and just go do that. But even home never feels like home.
The night I came home was rather nice, but everything has kind of fizzled since then. Today, I was lucky enough to receive my ATM card from my dad, so at least I'm not broke anymore. It is weird having the whole day off work. I don't know what to do with my time. I should have cleaned my rifle in these last couple of days, but I didn't. Now it's going to have to wait until I get off leave. Whatever. I know almost everything that I am dealing with is out of my control right now, and it really bugs me. To add to my other problems, I have been having mild chest pains on the left side of my chest. I used to get pain sometimes in Iraq, too, but I attributed it to having to wear my flak jacket with the sappy plates and fully loaded magazines.
And in his turn, Odysseus, favorite of Zeus, told of all the discomfiture he had inflicted on others and all the miseries which he himself had undergone. He began with his victory over the Cicones and his visit to the fertile land where the lotus eaters lived. He spoke of what the Cyclops did and the price he made him pay for the fine men he ruthlessly devoured.
Then comes time to get out of the military. Dreams seem to be the best way to describe my motivation. I can afford to go to school now, I would say to myself. So we packed up the Jeep, my girlfriend and I that I plucked from back home, our dog, and myself, drove from California to Michigan, excited to see what the future would bring us.
When I got out of the Navy, I thought I knew what it was. It was just a job, I told myself. I wasn't very good at it either, and like you do when you're bad at your job, I quit to go back to school. I exited the same way I entered, needing money for school, and I elided the whole thing as some kind of mad 4-year hiccup.
It's important to note that when you get out of the military as a sergeant, you go from making about 60 grand a year to nothing. Your final paychecks are sometimes held, and it takes 2 months before unemployment kicks in and 3 months before you see educational benefits.
Sometimes this didn't work. I'd end up on some list of people to be thanked for their service, and I'd instantly be uneasy around everyone. The people thanking me didn't seem to know what they meant by it, and most of the other people being recognized along with me had had stronger commitments and had made real sacrifices. Most of them had served in a time of war, whereas I didn't even have a combat specialization.
Even if you've never seen combat, the stress level of combat operations teaches you to bottle up every stressful situation, and it's when you get home that all those feelings start to dissipate. For me, the only way that I could be alone with myself was if I was altered. I wasn't comfortable just being alone.
This was very difficult to explain, not only because no one wants to hear a detailed justification for your discomfort around them, but because due to my specialization, I literally couldn't talk about my work. Of course, I'm not allowed to talk about it is the worst thing you can say. People reflexively think of you as a cross between James Bond and Batman. That suit certainly didn't fit.
To which the thoughtful Laertes replied, "By Father Zeus, Athena, and Apollo, if only I could have been the man I was, when as king of the Cephalonians, I took the stronghold of Nerocuse on the mainland cape, and like that have stood by you yesterday in our palace, with armor on my shoulders and beaten off those suitors. I'd have laid many of them low in the halls and delighted your heart."
But most of the time, I just felt at home. In graduate school, I felt like I belonged, and when I took my first faculty position, teaching ancient Greek language and literature, it fit me like a beanbag chair. You sink into it, and you immediately feel like you never need to get up again.
So they talked together, and the others finished their task of preparing the meal. They took their places on seats and chairs and were helping themselves to food, when the old man Dolius came in with his sons, weary after their work. They had been called in by their mother, the old Sicilian woman who looked after them and lovingly cared for their old father, now that his years sat heavily upon him.
To use a more classical example, I was like all the people whose names are never mentioned in the Iliad. They didn't accomplish enough to get noticed, but they also didn't get killed, and they sailed home to no particular fanfare. And that was it. Troy was far away, and that's where it should stay.
Odysseus told of how he had listened to the sweet song of the sirens, how he had sailed by the wandering rocks by the... How do you say it, Professor?
See, now it's good.
Charybdis?
Charybdis.
Charybdis?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yes.
Charybdis? By dread Charybdis and by Scylla, whom no sailors passed unscathed. How his men had killed the cattle of the sun, how Zeus the thunderer had struck his vast ship with a flaming bolt, and all his fine company had been killed at one fell swoop, though he himself had escaped their dreadful fate.
Deployments were rough. I know it's hard for veterans just to come out and say it with the entire ego thing. It's a volunteer force. It's what you signed up for. But 12 on, 12 off, 7 days a week is just the start. Sometimes you don't see a port on an aircraft carrier for 8 to 10 weeks at a time. And by week 2, everyone starts to get a very special kind of bitchy. Not to mention that if you're what some would call or consider a shitbag, you get first dibs on all the horrible jobs, and you have to hear about your turtleneck being wiped on someone else's genitalia while you're wearing it. When you return home from deployments, it's all the married folks that had people waiting for them on the docks or on the flight line for you. One of my parents didn't even show up to my high school graduation. You think they were gonna fly in from Michigan just because I was returning home stateside?
He described his arrival at the Isle of Ogygia in his reception by the nymph Calypso, who had longed to marry him and kept him in her vaulted cavern, a pampered guest, offering immortality and ageless youth, but never won him round. Finally, how he arrived after a disastrous voyage at Chier, where the Phoenicians honored him in their hearts like a god and sent him home by ship with generous gifts of bronze and gold and clothes.
The gifts sit unused, lovingly bought, eagerly purchased, but entirely useless. Isn't that exactly what souvenirs are? Entirely useless? The traveler picks up a token, imbuing it with more value than it alone possesses, and tries to carry that emotional attachment onto a loved one who should equally value said gift. My barracks room is full of these tokens. They haunt me about what was planned only weeks ago and what didn't happen. Money wasted, time wasted. Dreams unrealized in the wake of the reality of coming home under unplanned circumstances. 2 family members' deaths and my grandmother's failing health encouraged my command to send me home earlier than the rest of my unit. Now my room is littered with unfulfilled expectations in the form of these souvenirs gathering dust, and I've only been home a brief while.
I remember vividly walking down the high, steep stairs of the carrier and seeing all the families hugging and reuniting and feeling happy for a fleeting moment. It was an awesome situation to see your friends and your bosses so happy to see their families. But as I sorted through the crowd and bumped into tens of dozens of people, I realized that not a single person was here to see me. And as I scanned the crowd, I noticed 2 or 3 other friends with the same empty feeling on their face too. I'd give them a head nod. I'd say something to the effect of, "Can't wait to go get fucked up," with a forced smile. I'd nod in approval as they would nod back at me as I headed back towards the long-term parking lot, with a sea bag strapped to my chest and my back, all the essentials.
Coming home was chaotic. The buses delivered us on the parade deck at Camp Margarita on Camp Pendleton, located in Southern California. Our long journey from Iraq was now complete. Families could be heard screaming inarticulately the names of their loved ones, hoping their cries would be heard more distinctly, and the minutes and seconds separating them from their family member would pass quickly. My family is not on this parade deck. This truth I know. They live across the United States, and they did not know that I made it home stateside until I called them earlier in this day from Bangor, Maine, where well-wishers provided us access to free cell phones to call our families.
"What a strange woman you are," he exclaimed. "The gods of Olympus gave you a harder heart than any other woman. No other wife could have steeled herself to keep so long out of the arms of a husband who has just returned to her in his native land after 20 wearisome years. Well, nurse, make a bed for me to sleep in alone, for my wife's heart is as hard as iron."
What a strange man you are, said the cautious Penelope. I'm not being haughty or contemptuous of you, though I'm not surprised that you think I am. But I have too clear a picture of you in my mind as you were when you sailed from Ithaca in your long-oared ship. Your bed shall be ready the moment you wish, now that the gods have brought you back to your own country and your lovely home. But since you have mentioned it, since a god put it in your heart, tell me all about this new ordeal. I suppose I shall hear about it sooner or later, so I might as well learn about it at once.
Handwritten journal entry, February 8th, 2007. I am writing this journal entry to you as you sleep, hopefully peacefully, in our room at the Holiday Inn in Sheridan, Wyoming, for anyone who doesn't know. I know these last couple of days have been very trying on you, which I am sorry for, but I am very thankful that I can be here for you. It was very wonderful to step off that beach 9000 Delta, if I remember the name of that plane, and walk into Sheridan's small airport to see you as the first person as I walked through the door. I am finding it very hard, I know I overuse the word very, to explain just how I've been feeling over the last couple of days. It saddens me to see you and Laura and your mom dealing with your dad's death. It is a pain that strikes me dearly as I remember the grief I felt at my mother's passing as well. Each day, you get slightly better about moving on, but in the back of your mind, you always think to yourself, what would my life be like if they were still around? And each milestone, birthdays, holidays, and our marriage, helped to remind me of all the things I had hoped to share with them. Right now, you seem to be holding up amazingly well, and I don't know how to feel for you. Sincerely, Cheryl.
What a strange woman you are, said the quick-witted Odysseus. Why press me so insistently? However, I will tell you all, holding nothing back, not that you will find it to your liking, any more than I do.
I was in Michigan for a grand total of 2 days before my girlfriend's sister made it very clear that I was ruining her sister's life. We were only in the house for 6 days. All her stuff was delivered there, and she kept a month's worth of rent. So after her and her sister got into it for the last time about me, we busted open the milk jug full of change and counted out $800 on the bed that we were saving for a vacation to get into an apartment. 3 months after separation, I was caught by my girlfriend's other sister stealing prescription pills out of her bathroom cabinet. What do? I ran. I told everyone that I had a problem. I sought help to appease my girlfriend. I went to meetings for less than a month, and then I left school after a semester and hopped back into the service, making zero amends to friends and family.
When Laertes heard this, a black cloud of misery enveloped him. Groaning heavily, he picked up the black dust in both of his hands and poured it over his gray beard.
Odysseus' heart was touched, and suddenly as he watched his dear father, a sharp spasm of pain shot through him. He rushed forward, flung his arms around his neck, and kissed him. "Father," he cried, "here I am, the very man you asked about, home in my own land after 20 years. But no more tears and lamentation, for I have news to tell you, and there is no need for haste. I have killed that gang of suitors in our palace. I have taken revenge for their bitter insults and all their crimes."
Laertes answered him, "If you who have come here really are my son Odysseus, home again, give me some definite proof to convince me."
The man behind Sheila. No protection, no protector. Behind him, he sees her. From her, no trees, meadow of green, no sea. The stars never fade, yet their flicker blinds him. Within the hurt is love's intangible curse. Home. Honor one's mother eagerly. You surround yourself with comfort. You surround yourself with pain. The mess of being human cannot escape your pain, your vein. You train and train and train, only to be vain. Settlement. Never. Bereavement at what cost? Are you lost? I must be coming home. Sigh, cry, laugh, and love. This, gentleman, is a gift from above. Life is a passage. Death is man's. Heaven is a place above the foreseen. Hell is what you portray. No God can lay. Man must partake in this manifestation, unfolded in an eye of love reverie. Al, you have always been a pal, a niece, yet always loyal. A person could confide in you. Where did you go? The land of sand and guns? I don't know. Talk to me. Sister, I always loved you. I just never knew this point of view. You have a nephew. He knows all about you. Say hello. Your niece. She's curious to meet you. Family, attention. I'm done. I want to scream. I'm done. I've been done. Your daughter, niece, sister is gone, flourishing in the sun. I am your son. The moon of Al is born. It has borne a place so unseen. It thrives in this beauty of life, scorned by riches, the heart's forgiven scars.
For 17 days and 17 nights we mourned for you, immortal gods and mortal men alike. And on the 18th day we committed you to the flames with a rich sacrifice of fatted sheep and crooked horned cattle round you. You were burnt in the clothing of the gods with lavish unguents and sweet honey, and Achaean heroes in full armor, infantry and charioteers moved in procession around the pyre where your body was burning and filled the air with sound.
In Florida, it took all of a week for me to fall into full-blown addiction. You know that first haircut you have to get? I networked with a barber by saying, I hurt my back. It takes a little while for insurance to kick in with the military. Do you know anyone?
He had just finished this last tale when sleep came suddenly upon him, relaxing all his limbs and banishing his cares.
$25,000 in cash advances later, I was a shell of myself. I was reduced to nothing but self-loathing, self-pity, and hopelessness, which turns a human being into nothing but a defense mechanism and a pile of justifications. Somehow, I asked for help before physically dying. It was then that I truly, finally started to come back home. I spent 2 weeks in a VA hospital because it was found out that I suffered from a mental illness. And then I spent the next 30 days in an inpatient treatment for dual diagnosis of drug addiction and mental illness.
Odysseus fixed his splendid armor around his shoulders, woke up Telemachus, the cowman, and the swineherd, and told them all to pick up their arms. They carried out his orders and put on their bronze armor. Then they opened the doors and went out with Odysseus leading.
February 3rd, 2007, Kuwait. MySpace journal entry. I thought that all my Marine friends might get a good laugh to know that I had to break down and buy Army PT swishy pants because it was either that or men's khaki trousers for the commercial flight home. I felt so awful buying these things at the counter, feeling like lurking somewhere in the corner was a Marine who would be saying something to me about it. I just hate the idea of traveling in PT gear, especially when it's not even my services. His father's sudden death prompted an earlier return from Iraq. I returned stateside to Wyoming, disheveled, a few days unclean, wearing Army swishy pants. A United States Marine in Army clothing. Months earlier, he had sent over my favorite pillow, my particular brand of toilet paper, Charmin Ultra Strong, Sobe Adrenaline energy drinks, and a set of civilian attire, so I had it for appropriate parts of the deployment. Before receiving the news that my father-in-law passed away, I had already begun preparing for my eventual arrival home. I did the responsible thing, mailing back all items not deemed essential for the return journey. I expected to return home with my unit. I expected to travel home to California. I expected to travel in my desert camouflage uniform with my rifle, 2 sea bags, and a Molly pack. Instead, I landed in the small Sheridan, Wyoming airport, sans rifle, with the rest of my stuff, wearing these ridiculous pants, waiting to see my husband, who I last saw in July, not even a month into our marriage.
But in my case, slowly, gradually, Troy came sailing back to me. I took on some administrative responsibilities, and I realized that most of what I knew about leadership I had learned in uniform. I worked alongside colleagues and students from many different backgrounds, and I realized that I had learned to do that from my chief petty officers. I taught ancient literature, most of which is, at most, one step away from combat stories, and I felt deeply the need for my students to understand that aspect about them. How authority structures under extreme stress can shatter, about the inherent unintelligibility of battle in the moment, about how Achilles can at once have acute feelings both of honor and petty pointlessness. Apparently my Navy service wasn't just a job. It wasn't a hiccup. It wasn't even a prolonged yawn. It had become part of my breathing. It had come home to me.
But tell me about yourself. I'm curious. Who are you, sir? Where do you come from? What is your native town, and who are your parents? Where is she moored, the good ship that brought you here with your gallant crew? Or were you traveling as a passenger on someone else's ship, which landed you and sailed away? I will tell you all you wish to know, said the subtle Odysseus.
Scared I might miss my husband, in the crowd I expected of others waiting for their respective family members. My heart is filled with disappointment. He's seeing me for the first time in months, dressed this way. My petite frame is hidden under the poofy fabric of these pants. And I can't tell how much I might smell from the lengthy flight home. So much for a beautiful homecoming. This is not the reunion you see photographed all the time nowadays.
To my surprise, I formed connections with my veteran students. It didn't bother them that I wasn't much of a Navy officer. It didn't bother them that I quit or that I never made any real sacrifices, as long as I was upfront about all those things. They felt that I understood their language. They liked to work through their stories in dialogue with the ancient stories I taught. And a few years ago, I felt a thrill when one of my veteran students, who knew my own lackluster military record, introduced me as a fellow veteran. I was surprised to learn that it was important to him to call me that, and to find that I agreed.
Then Odysseus and his illustrious son attacked the front rank of the enemy and struck them with their swords and double-pointed spears. They would have destroyed them all and seen that none went home alive if Athena, daughter of the Aegis-bearing Zeus, had not raised a great cry and checked the whole throng. Ithacans, stop this disastrous fight and separate at once before blood is shed.
It took almost a year for the 7 charges of court-martial to be dropped, and I left service honorably. In 2 years, I married that girlfriend, and we have a child together now. I had a $65K job, and I left it to follow my dreams in sports journalism. We have a 3-car garage with a pool. I've been clean since that day. I went to treatment in 2012, and we are happy. In order to come home completely, I had to build a home in my own head. I had to realize that nothing is ever as bad as it was, and that every day is a blessing. Most importantly, I had to learn how to unconditionally love myself. I had to learn to embrace my inadequacies and my gifts, and always give thanks to a power greater than myself by paying it forward. For me, I have to do this every single day.
I am ill-equipped for this homecoming. The temperature is a low double digit, probably 12 degrees, and I lack winter clothes. Sheridan has a JCPenney's, and in an amusing old-fashioned way, the store's sign reads JCPenney Company in black letters on a yellow background. A green awning provides a touch of shade. I have never been in a JCPenney's like this one, and I cannot find my way around. The layout is unfamiliar, and this shopping experience is not a time to refresh my wardrobe. I shop for appropriate clothing to wear to my father-in-law's funeral and a few other items to get me through the next couple of days.
This sure is a mission. Home, truthfully, is where you make it, not always where you're from.
At Athena's cry, the color drained from their cheeks. In terror at the sound of her voice, they let their weapons drop from their hands onto the ground.
Thomas, my husband, follows me unexpectedly around my unfamiliar settings in JCPenney's. Every moment is spent making up for the time apart. I wander around, touching different shirts and pants, looking for a few suitable replacements for my current attire. After securing a few pieces to start, I enter the fitting room. He joins me inside. He sits on a simple bench as I hang the clothes up on the wall hanger. Giddy as a child, he revels in seeing me, his wife, undress and dress my body again. My body is not new to him, but there is a different joy now as he delights in seeing me since our July separation. Not one to take excess pride in my body, I blush at his gaze. His presence in the fitting room breaks an unspoken and an unwritten rule, but no one interrupts this quiet moment together.
The much-enduring good Odysseus raised a terrifying war cry, gathered himself together, and pounced on them like a swooping eagle. But at this moment, Zeus flung a flaming thunderbolt, which fell in front of the bright-eyed daughter of that formidable sire. Athena called out to Odysseus, "Odysseus, favorite of Zeus, resourceful son of Laertes, hold your hand. Stop fighting your countrymen, in case you incur the wrath of Zeus the Thunderer.
When I teach the Odyssey, I teach it in its ancient context. Greek epic has a number of different scene types, which it uses over and over. One of these is the hospitality scene, which represents an ideal way that one receives an unknown guest into the home, according to ancient Greek tradition. The stranger is instantly recognized as a worthy person. He is fed and entertained. Only then does the host ask his name and establish a more permanent relationship, in which they can reciprocally host one another and look out for one another forever. The Odyssey is composed of repeated variations on this scene type, in which every time it goes wrong somehow. Circe receives her guests with a meal, but then changes them into animals and refuses to let them go. Odysseus' men invade the home of the Cyclops Polyphemus and feed themselves without waiting for his welcome, and then find that their host is going to make a meal of them. Even the kindly Phaeacians are at times rude and always arrogant, eager to be rid of their guest who, by delaying telling them his name, milks their politeness for all it's worth. In fact, the overarching story of the Odyssey is itself an extended version of this scene in which Odysseus yearns to be welcomed as a stranger into his own home. In his absence, he has changed, and his home has changed too. So stranger is, by that point, the proper name for him. The happy ending of the Odyssey is that this strangeness is bridged. It is not erased, but it is accommodated.
Odysseus obeyed her, and his heart rejoiced.
Then Peleus Athene, daughter of the Aegis-bearing Zeus,
Still using Mentor's form and voice for her disguise,
Establish peace between the two sides.